Hey guys, it's Snipnuts. I recently made a few edits, and one of them of which had pretty intense animation in it. They all kind of had animation in it, but my specific edit, Get Ready for Killing Stalking, almost everything was animated. It was a very new thing to me, and I got such positive feedback on it, and I was honestly really surprised. A lot of people have been asking how the heck I do that. Basically, take a photo, just a photo of someone beautiful, yeah, and then you turn it into this. This is very similar to what you see in my Get Ready edit. I recreated it just a few moments ago for you guys, and we are going to recreate it again. And I am going to try my best to explain everything I do in the best possible way because I know how confusing this can be. I will try to explain it in a very short way. I've never made a tutorial, so I'm so sorry if this is like a really low class tutorial. You can only try, right? So I use 3 main programs, of which you don't necessarily need because there are alternatives. But I use Fire Alpaca, Sony Vegas Pro, and another program on a Apple computer called Final Cut Pro. An alternative for Fire Alpaca is, well, I'm not entirely sure, but if you have a Windows computer, this application is completely free and it is honestly incredible. I love this app. You can do a lot of freaking stuff with it. Sony Vegas Pro is definitely not free. It's like, I don't even know, $300 to $600. An alternative for this is Photoshop, which is also not free. I'm really sorry if you guys don't have this stuff. However, you can probably find it for free somewhere. Final Cut Pro is also not free, but it is for only Apple computers, and I just use it as a general editor to just put everything together, add effects and transitions, yada yada yada. But I am going to teach you guys how to do all of this step by step. Choose any photo. It could literally be anything that you want to animate. You open it into Fire Alpaca. So open, here it is. Alright, so here we have the photo in Fire Alpaca. I love the name, it's like super meme-alicious. So once it is opened in Fire Alpaca, basically what we are going to do now is create or recreate the background layer. So everything that is behind Sang Woo here, we are going to recreate it. The reason why we need to recreate it is because the foreground here, and the foreground is Sang Woo himself, is going to move. We're going to move his shoulders, his arm, his hand, his head, and his eyes. To move it, if we were to tilt his head to the left, it would be taking up this area. This area would be exposed. It would be blank, and that would not be okay. The whole key to animation is to make sure that you have a background for the foreground. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this layer. Down here is the copy button. You just copy it. It's real simple. You can press these to make the layer disappear. It's not deleting, it just goes away. So we're going to keep the bottom layer invisible. Did I just say invisible? And I'll tell you why we needed to copy that later. What we're going to do is recreate the background. So the first thing I do typically is if there is a speech bubble, not everyone's going to have a speech bubble, especially if they're not animating a manga or a comic or something like that. I take the eyedropper, I copy the white of the speech bubble. I go to the pen tool, click pen, make it bigger so that takes shorter amount of time, and I just paint over the text just because it's kind of distracting when there's text in the speech bubble. You don't have to take it away, but I like to, especially since I want the focal point to be of this beautiful man right here. You always want to think about this when you have a photo. You want to think about the way you want to move it. I showed you guys that this is the way that I want it to move. I want it to move to the left. I want his head to tilt. I want his hand to tilt slightly, his shoulders to go up, his arm to go up as well, you know. So what I'm going to do here is fill in all those areas that need to be filled in. As you can see in the background, there's like these boxes and such that he keeps in his basement. Obviously not something entirely important, so you could honestly just get rid of that. But what I'm going to do here, and as you the background is a gradient. It goes from a pinker color to a more lavender lilac color. Because it's a gradient, it makes it more difficult to make it look good. So what I do is I just fill in the entire thing with one color so that it's, you know, simpler to deal with. Here I am just filling it in. Do not touch the speech bubble unless you want to completely like draw over it, but that would take a lot of time. So I'm just going to completely erase his head, or not erase, but draw over. You don't want to touch anything else but his head. You don't want to draw over anything else but his head is what I mean. Oh, and you can press Control Z anytime to undo anything if you made a mistake. When you draw the background, background. It does not have to be perfect at all, especially if you add more effects to the video near the end. It will be completely fine to have not a perfect background. Some of them will look really sloppy. That's just how they're going to be. Now that we took care of the head thing, we are going to do the same for the hand. And take note that we're going to move the shoulders upward. Because we're moving upward, all the stuff that is above his shoulders is just going to be covered up. The only thing that's going to be removed is this part, but we don't have to recreate it because we can just zoom in a little bit more to hide that flaw. So it'll be fine. We don't even have to worry about the shoulders. They'll just go up. For the hand, we're going to have to cover up with his skin tone where the hand is so that we can move the hand. Take the eyedropper tool, choose the color of his skin tone, take your pen tool, make it a little smaller so it's easier, and just draw over the hand. Does not have to be perfect. Make it look alright. And I'm gonna overlap a little bit just in case you want to be safe. I'm also gonna do the same for the arm because the arm is going to slightly move as well. So remember, we're just making a background for the foreground. So basically just draw where you think his body would be minus his fingers. So then take this eyedropper tool again and just draw over his fingers. Okay, and you can take this color again, just make it a little bit more even. And then same on this side because his thumb is showing a bit. This is honestly all you need to do for the background because this is really the only thing that you're going to move. The whole thing on the eyes, because we will animate the eyes in this tutorial, that is a whole nother thing. Instead of recreating the background, we're gonna have to recreate the foreground to animate the eyes, the pupils, and the eyebrows. That is why I copied this layer. We will do that after. Now that you have recreated the background, you don't have to do this, but I always go to the blur tool and I just smooth it out just to make it look a little bit better and blend in with everything basically. Now you are basically finished with the background, so I go to File, Save As. I always save the background as one PNG. Make sure it's transparent. Not that transparency will matter for this. PNG is just a better quality and I always save it as one PNG. Go to the layer that hasn't been touched, copy the layer again because we're going to need it again for something later. And now what we're going to do is recreate the foreground. So what you do is very similar to what you did for the background, just on his face. Take the eyedropper tool, copy his skin tone nearest to his eye. Go to the pen, make it a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with. Zoom in however much you want. Here, let me make that smaller. And just draw over his left eye sac bag thing. Dang, Sango, you got that nice eyeliner, boy. That's pretty good. I mean, you don't have to make it perfect. Why we're covering it is because we are going to animate his eye bags, his pupils, and his eyebrows. So we have to cover up all the things that we are going to animate. So now that we covered up the eye bag, we have to cover up his pupils. So copy the white of his eye, or eyedrop it, and cover his pupil. Make sure there's no remnants of it. Now his eyebrow. Cover it up real good. Now do the exact same thing for this side of his face, and I'm going to speed it up because I'm pretty sure you guys already know how to do it as I just explained it. Alright, that's not too bad. I also do the blur effect just to make it smoother and prettier. So this is your new foreground. Yay, you made a foreground. So now go to File, Save As, and I save the foreground as 2 PNG. So make sure you do that. There you go, now you have a background and a foreground. Good job. Now with this layer that I told you to copy earlier, but you were probably like, why the heck do I have to do that? It is because we need to isolate the eye bags, the pupils, and the eyebrows now. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to move 6 things. Copy it 6 times, or 5 times in this case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make all the below layers invisible. You are going to take the Select tool, which is this weird looking thing, kind of looks like a PS4 or an Xbox controller. And you want to be kind of precise with this, but in the end it doesn't really matter, just as long as you get a good shape. You are going to select around the eye bag. as close as possible really, but it also doesn't have to be too close, because if it's too close then it would look too skinny. Now you'll see that everything except for the eye bag is blue. Go up here to select an inverse. So now the only thing that's blue is the eye bag. Press delete and everything will go away. So you have just a transparent eye bag, which is what you want. Go to File, Save As 3 PNG, and you have to make sure that this file is a PNG, otherwise the background will not be transparent and you won't be able to put it on top of things. So save that, make the eye bag layer disappear, make the bottom one appear, and make sure it's selected, and press Ctrl D to deselect his eye bag. So now you're going to do the exact same thing with the pupil. Just go around it. There you go. Select inverse, delete, file, save as 4 PNG. Notice that it's just so much simpler to keep things organized. So I just number them. Same thing for the eyebrow. Control D to deselect the pupil and get a working away on these snazzy eyebrows. Okay, select inverse, delete, file, save as 5 PNG. Now you're going to do the exact same thing for this side of his face. So I'm going to speed this up. Alrighty, you're pretty much done with everything you need to animate now. So now that you have the background, the foreground, and all these fun little things going on there. Interesting. You can now close this. Actually, you know what? Don't close it just in case you mess up on something later. I always keep it open. So now open Sony Vegas Pro. All right, so I do not know how to use this program very well. The only the only thing that I know how to do on this program is animation. So here I have 1 and 2. I take 2, the foreground, put it there. I take 1, the background, put it there, and zoom in a little bit. So it typically makes your photos of around 5 seconds. So that's perfectly fine for what I want to do. Make sure, of course, that your foreground is on the top and your background is on the bottom. Count how many things you're going to animate. So we're going to animate the head, the hand, the arm, and the shoulders. So 4 things. So that means we're going to make this thing go down 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Do the same for this one, right above that other one. Now what I do is I click on the foreground layer, I Control C, which means copy. I copy the layer just so I can paste it when I'm done animating this first layer. And the first thing that we are going to animate is whatever is on the bottommost layer. In other words, what is the body part that is behind everything else? So in this case, the shoulders would be behind everything else. I mean, the head is behind everything else as well, but we're going to just start with the shoulders. Click on this tool, the event pan/crop tool. Go over here to mask, check it, do the select tool just so that you can move around more and get a good view of his shoulders. Go to the anchor creation tool. You're going to create a mask of his shoulders so that you'll be able to move it separately from everything else. So start here and just surround his shoulders with anchor points. Alright, when you get to the hand, just make sure that you avoid it. You do not get any part of the hand. So just go around it. Look at those busty shoulders. Woo. Now when you have selected everything, just select the very first anchor point again and it will mask it. And as you can see, the only thing that is visible now is the shoulders of the foreground. So now go to position, and you don't necessarily need to worry about it in this case unless you're rotating something, but you always want to make sure that the anchor point, which is this little white dot in the center, is, if you're just moving something up and down, it really doesn't matter. So you didn't really have to do that for that, but you will have to do it for the head and the hand and the arm and whatever else you want to rotate. But for the shoulders, we're not going to rotate them. So take this cursor thing and move it all the way to the end. And what this is a keyframe timeline. And if you don't know what a keyframe is, it is basically setting a point in time where something moves, something stops, something does something, it changes to the other keyframe. So we are going to set another keyframe here from this original. So at the start of this video, the animation is going to look like this. At the end of the video, it is going to look different. His shoulders are going to raise, his arm is going to tilt, his head is going to tilt, his eyes are going to move. But we are not going to animate his eyes in this program, and you can, but I'm not going to. It's much easier to do it in another program, which I will show you how to later. If you move this around, you can see on the display screen that his shoulders are obviously moving up and down as I move it up and down. So what you're going to do is just move them up however much you want. Exit out, you can watch a little preview. I'm going to select this so it only plays this part. Remember when we copied this layer, press Control V, and now you have another foreground. We're going to animate this part of his arm. So mask, selection tool, zoom in and select his arm. Easy peasy. Position, you definitely do want to make sure that the anchor point is on his arm. Think about how the body moves and take that and make sure that the cursor is at the end and raise it up a little bit to kind of equal where his shoulders are. And I'm going to rotate it just a tad. I think that's okay. We're going to do his hand now. So Control V. Oh, actually, no, we are not going to animate his hand just yet because his head is behind his hand. We want to make sure that the layer is behind the layer of the hand. We are going to do his head now. So let's just select around it. Now that his whole head is selected, position, move the anchor point to his nose or his chin or whatever, but his chin is obviously not visible. So I'm just going to put it a little bit under his nose, move the cursor to the end, zoom out a little bit. So now just look at the display screen and move it up, whatever looks right. You could tilt his head to the right, but I think it would look better if it tilts to the left. Tilt it however much you want. Control V. Now we are going to animate his hand. So mask it, get a better look at his hand, surround the mask on his hand. Okay, there you go. Put the anchor point on the back of his hand where his palm would be. Raise it up a little bit to be equal with the arm. Make sure you always look at the display screen. I think that's all right. Now let's rotate it. We're gonna have to raise it a little bit more because as you can see, there's this white area that you don't want. Now because the arm doesn't look like it's in place, we're gonna have to move that just a tad as well. And now there's this little white area on the shoulder, so I'm gonna also fix that spot. But if this white area really does bother you, this is why you keep File Alpaca open, because you can go back to this layer and you can draw whatever is missing there. So obviously we would draw a little bit of skin tone, probably right around here where his shoulders have lifted up to, but I don't think it looks particularly bad like this. I mean, it's just a tiny bit of white, and especially if you add blur and whatnot later, it's barely noticeable and no one will see it. So there you go. That is basically it. File, render as. I always do Sony Tablet 1080p just because all the other formats, if they're MP4, have given me issues for some reason. I don't really know why, but I always do Sony Tablet 1080p in MP4 because MP4 is useful format A. I always go by letters when it's video, so I render it. Okay, once it's rendered, you can open it just to see it at a bigger view, make sure it looks all right. Oh, heck yeah, boy. That looks fine. Yeah, there is some areas that look like they were clipped, but I'm not going to worry about that for the sake of this tutorial. It really doesn't matter. In fact, a lot of animation that I used for those edits looked similar to this, but I didn't worry about it because once you add effects and stuff, it looks perfectly fine. So now you can close everything. Now I'm going to move on to my Apple computer. I'm going to open Final Cut Pro. What is this? Sorry, oh yeah, this is a screenshot from Yuri on Ice that was really funny to me, so I took a screenshot. Start a new project. I'm going to call this Tut for tutorial. Now go to your files where you saved everything. You can open them here. Just drag them to where your clips are. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Ooh, not that much. Good lord. As you can see, it's showing a lot of flaws here, so zoom in as much as you need to. There we go. I think that's perfectly fine. Now that you have scaled up your clip and all that mess, I usually speed it up by 2 times so that it's not so slow and everything, and it looks a lot better when it's sped up. And now you're going to take, remember his left eye sac bag is 3 PNG. Take it, make sure it's the same length, scale it up however much you need to, and if you need to, you can also use a reference image to help you out at this part, because a lot of people find that helpful, of course. I just go by what I think looks best. Set a keyframe. Excuse me. And I like him to squint at the very beginning, so it gives him an effect like he's getting sang shook at the very end. I'm gonna squint his eyes just a tad. That looks fine. I'm gonna go to the end of the video. You need to rotate it a bit. That looks fine. And have his eyes wider, and then we can see what the result is once we play it back. Okay, that looks good. 4 PNG was his pupil, his left pupil. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing. Scale it up however much looks right. You could also put his pupil under this layer if you would like to. You see how it goes under his eye bag. I'll try it out. Set a keyframe, go to the very end, and let's make him look at you. I think that's pretty good. 5 PNG was his left eyebrow. So you know the rule. Let's just do what we gotta do. Set a keyframe, go to the end, and I'm gonna make his eyebrow rotate just a bit upwards so that it looks like he's really getting shook. Voila, yeah, not bad at all. We're gonna do the exact same thing for the other half of his beautiful face. I might speed this up. Look at him. Alright, I think this is pretty darn good. So once you have that, you can combine all these by making a compound clip. Right-clicking and doing compound clip. I'm sorry that I didn't explain that. Just to add a bit more effect, I always add the light rays effect. And I add vignette in the same spot. And there you have it. This is your finished animation. Alright, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, boy. Yeah. So that is a tutorial on how to animate. I'm sorry that it's kind of poor. I probably could have done it a lot better, but I hope you guys liked this, and thank you so much, so much for your support, for following me, and for subscribing. And definitely more edits are definitely going to come. So thank you guys so much, and if you haven't checked out Killing Stalking, you can read it on Les Hin. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, but Koogi is an amazing artist and writer, so definitely check that out. Bye bye.